This is a review of section 1.4 and 1.5. You did this for homework on Tuesday night, and now you can just check it, and you can watch me do the problems and see how you did in the end. Okay, so we have 8 minus 18, and I don't want to subtract that. I want to add the opposite. So 8 plus a negative 18. I know the difference between that and that is 10, and the bigger absolute value is negative, so that's going to equal negative 10. Here we have a negative 16 minus a negative 5. Again, I want to add the opposite. So now we have negative 16 plus 5. And when I do that, because they're different, one's a negative, one's a positive, I find the difference of them, which is 11. The bigger absolute value is this one, so it becomes negative 11. Negative 18 minus 7, I want to add the opposite. So now it's a negative 18 plus a negative 7. And when it's the same, I'm going to get them, just going to add them together, and it'll be a negative. So 18 plus 7 is 25, and they're both negative, so the answer is negative 25. Negative 12 minus negative 27, I want to add the opposite. So I have a negative 12 plus a 27. Okay, they're opposites, so I find the difference of them. So a 27 minus 12 is 15. And then I know that this is the biggest absolute value, so it's a positive 15. Let's look at this word problem here. Your score on a game is minus 300. You answer the final question incorrectly, so you lose 400 points. What's your final score? So if you have 300 negative, and then you're going to take away, or you're going to add to it another loss of 400. So it could be like that. You could also say you have a negative 300, and you're going to subtract 400 because you lost 400 more. And then watch what happens. If I decide I don't want to subtract, I add the opposite. And then it became that same thing. So now it's negative 300 plus negative 400. They're the same, both negatives. So I add them together, and I know it's going to be a negative. Number 34, oxygen has a boiling point of 183 and a melting point of 219. What is the difference of the melting point and the boiling point? So we want to take, whenever it says difference, you're subtracting those. So let's take the difference minus 219, a negative 219, and I'm going to subtract negative 183. And that will get me the difference between those two. Now I want to add the opposite. So I add the opposite. So I have a big negative and a positive. I take 219 and I take away 183. That gets me 6, and that gets me 3. So 36. And because the absolute value of this is bigger, then I know it's a negative 36 degrees Celsius. Number 35 is a fun little word problem. In 1 month, you earn $16 for mowing the lawn. Okay, so I'm going to start with 16. And then I earn 15 for babysitting. So I add that to my earnings. And 20 is my allowance, so I add 20. So I'm going to get the total of that together. that would be 51. Now it says you spend, so I have 51, I spend $12 at the movie theater, and let's see what I have now. If I take 12 away from 51, that's 39. So I have $39. Then the question is, how much more money do you need to buy a $45 video game? So I need the 45. I'm going to take away the 39 that I have, and that gets me $6. So I need $6 to get me to 45 so I can buy the video game. Number 36 says, write a subtraction expression using integers that equal -6. Now, there's a ton of answers for this one, but I'm going to start out. I know it's going to be, I need to do a subtraction, so it's going to be something minus something. So if I want to get my answer to be a -6, I could say 1 minus 7. So then if I do 1 minus 7, I get a -6. I could also do, if I start with a negative, -10 minus, say I do a -4. If I would do that, I would add the opposite. So I have a -10, and I put 4 toward that. It gets me a -6. So lots of different ways to do that one. Number 37 says, write two negative integers whose difference is positive. So again, we have a minus, and it has to be a negative integer. So say I have -1 minus, all I have to do is a -1, absolute value greater than -1. So let's see if this gets me a positive number. So -1, I'm going to add the opposite. So -1 plus 2 gets me a +1. So I'll write that again. -1 plus, oops, I didn't want to do that. -1 minus -2. So I need two negative integers. That's a negative integer. That's a negative integer. And the difference, which is subtraction, the difference between those is positive. So if I have -1 and -2, I subtract those and I get a positive number. All right, 38 takes us from just integers to now we have rational numbers. So we have fractions included, fractions and decimals. All right, if I have a -5/12 minus 3/10, I'm going to go add the opposite. So I have a -5/12 plus a -3/10. Now I have to have the same denominator, so I'm going to do, I would say 60. So 12 times 5 is 60. 5 times 5 is 25. So -25 plus a -10 times 6 is 60. So 3 times 6 is 18. So now I have a -25/60 plus a -18 over 60. It's going to be something over 60. And all I have to do is add the 25 plus the 18, which gets me to 43. And I can't simplify that at all. So my answer is 43 over 60. Here's another one. Before I get anything going, I want to make sure I have improper fractions and the same denominator. So 4 times 3 is 12, plus 3 is 15 over 4, minus 7/8. I'm going to make that into 8. So that'll be 38 minus 7/8. I want to add the opposite. 30 plus a -7 is 23 over 8. And I can take that 23 over 8 and turn it into a mixed number. 8 goes into 23 2 times, that's 16. And 16 taken away from 23 leaves me with 7, 8. So 3 3/4 minus 7, 8 is 2 7/8. Let's do a little decimal one. 3.8 minus a negative 7.45. Now, I don't want a minus. I want to change that to a plus. And then I have to do the opposite to that. So now it's 3.8 plus 7.45. I put 3.8 here. And then I put 7 point. I have to line up my decimals like that. I can put a 0 there. So it's 0, 2. Bring down my decimal, and 11. And so my answer is 11.25. Number 41 says, find the distance between negative 3.71 and negative 2.59 on a number line. So if I would do a number line, I know I have 0 there, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 3, and that's negative 4. We'll put that one here, negative 3.71, and then negative 2.59. So what I need is the distance from here all the way to here. And I know that it looks like it's going to be just probably about 1. But they're both negatives. I won't even worry about that. I'm going to find the difference of the absolute value. So I take 3.71 and I subtract the absolute value of negative 2.59, which is 259. And when I do that, that becomes a 6, 7, 2, 1, 1. I bring down my decimal. So the distance between those two numbers is 1.12. All right, 42 says a turtle is 20 5/6 inches below the surface of a pond. It dives to a depth of 32 1/4 inches. What's the change in the turtle's position? So if it's starting at 20, let's just say this is like 20, and it's below the surface, and it goes to this point here, which is 32 1/4, 20 5/6. So this here is the difference. It's going from here to here. So it's going farther down. All right. So let's find the difference between this and this. Negative 32, oopsie, negative 32 1/4 minus negative 20 5/6. I don't want to subtract them. I want to add the opposite. So we'll add the opposite. And let's see what we get. Well, we have to make it into improper. And this becomes 4 times 32 plus 1 is 129. Negative 129 over 4 plus, that would be 125 over 6. And let's make both of these 12. That times 3 would be a negative 387 plus that times 2 is 250. So I know it's going to be 12 on the bottom. And now I just take this negative 387 plus 250. And they're opposite, so it gets me a negative. And I got to find the difference of the absolute value of these two. What the difference of that is 137. And the absolute value is greater here, so it's a negative 137. So I have a negative 137 over 12. That is the answer when it's not put into a mixed number. So let's put it into a mixed number. How many times does 12 go into 137? Well, it goes into there 11 times. So it's going to be a negative 11. And 12 times 11 is 132. So then it leaves me with 5 left over. Negative 11 and 5/12. And that's the change going from this 20, negative 20 or 20 below, to negative 32. The change is it's going down or minus 11 and 5/12 inches. And I forgot to label my unit. Okay. Number 43, the last one. The lowest temperature ever recorded on Earth was a negative 89.2 degrees Celsius. And that's in Antarctica. The highest temperature ever, 56.7 in California. What's the difference between the highest and lowest recorded temperature? So let's take the highest, 56.7 degrees. And we're going to, difference is subtraction, so we're going to subtract the negative 89.2. And I can see that it's subtracting a negative. So let's do, instead of that, let's add the opposite. And so it's 56.7 plus 89.2. 56.7, 89.2. Line up my decimals. 7 plus 2 is 9. 9 plus 6 is 15. 8 plus 5 is 13 plus 1 is 14. So it's 145.9 degrees Celsius. And that is the difference between the highest and the lowest. Okay. Let me know if you have any questions on any of this, and we'll keep reviewing and getting ready for our test on Chapter 1.